Welcome in to another episode of Odd Man Rush. Hope we're all having a great start or end to your week whenever you're listening to us. Happy to have you joining the program as we head into our round three, also known as the conference finals episode. We're excited, even though both of our teams at this point are now out of the Stanley Cup contention. We're still excited to take a look at who is going to take home the hardware. I'm Will Highland. I'm joined, as always, by my good pal and the best 400-meter sprinter in the history of Colby Sawyer College, Kyle Diezel. Kyle, what's up?
Oh, not much. Enjoying the nice 80-degree weather we're having today and the rest of the week. So can't complain too much here.
Yeah, I like how you always start with a good weather report, because I'd like to think that Odd Man Rush Nation, is made up of people from across the country. I doubt it is. It's probably just people that we know. But if there are people out there listening from across the country, I'd like that you just throw in a good New England weather report here to start every show. Brings a little bit of happiness to the situation here, especially now that the Bruins are out and my happiness level is a little bit lower than it was before. But Kyle, speaking of the hot weather, all right, it's now getting to be that point where the seasons have changed from spring to summer. And in the summertime, we get a lot of coaching changes as well as the seasons changing.
Mm-hmm.
What have you made of the recent coaching hires? Both that Rod Brindamore has been extended by the Carolina Hurricanes and that the Toronto Maple Leafs have brought in Craig Berube. Those are probably the two most high-profile coaching news updates to date. What do you make of those moves?
I mean, I like it. I mean, it's like I'm like stuck in the middle for both because I do like the Leafs signing their new coach because he won a title down with the Blues 2 years ago. However, since then they haven't done much.
5 years ago, but yes,
Um,
time flies.
Time does fly, but I'm not sure. I like it. I think it's a good start, but I don't know if that really will address the issue. So if he's not able to make an immediate impact, I would say for that team, I think it just shows that it's not the coaching is the issue. It shows that something else is the issue. If that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, I get that. And look, it's not the first
Yeah,
high
no, it's not.
profile head coach that they brought in. I'm looking here just because I want to get my years straight. We had Mike Babcock join the Maple Leafs in 2015,
Mhm.
and he coached them until 2020, I believe, or maybe it was just before 2020. It was November 20th, 2019. He was let go. So he coached there for really the first few years of that Matthews, Marner, Tavares, Nylander window. And he had won a Stanley Cup with what had he? No, he hadn't won a Stanley Cup. He had won Jack Adams Awards. Did he win one with the Red Wings?
7 years ago.
I think they won in 08. Let me look back. So
I know
yeah,
they
I
won.
think he had won a Stanley Cup with the Red Wings in 08, back when they had like Pavel Datsyuk and all those guys
Yeah.
still, and Jimmy Howard maybe. But that was 2008. He won a Stanley Cup. So Mike Babcock went to Toronto, granted with a younger team, and the Leafs couldn't win with Mike Babcock, who had been a winner in the league. So it's not, to your point, it's not like, oh, well, we brought in a guy who's won a Stanley Cup, and he's kind of hard-nosed and old school, like Mike Babcock was, and that's not going to be an immediate fix.
No, like I said, I think we've talked about before. I think the issue is what we're not seeing on the ice. It's what we're not seeing. So it's basically everything behind in the front office, in with what's going on in the locker room. I really don't know if Tavares has a hold as their current captain has a hold of this team. I don't know if any captain in the last few years who was previous captain, I forget who it was, has had a real true locker room control. I don't see it. Like I don't see Matthews really running that locker room. I don't see Nylander running that locker room. Like what's going on that they're just not getting to the next level. You know what I mean? Like you can only make up so many excuses, but it's like what are you hiding at this point? Like you can't just keep saying, "Oh, it's the coaching. Oh, it's this, it's that." There's something going on. To
Yeah,
what I'm seeing else is going on behind the closed doors.
I agree. It was before him, it was Patrick Marleau, and before him, it was Dion Phaneuf. So, I mean, I don't really know what to make of that in terms of a culture change. But to your point, like I I think bringing in Craig Berube isn't going to be bad. But to
No,
me, it's like them losing. I don't think it was because Sheldon Keefe wasn't a good coach. Like, I don't know. I don't want to spend 1,000 minutes on the Maple Leafs because I feel like we always do this. It turns into like a Maple Leafs investigative session to try and crack the code of why they keep choking. Um, but Craig Berube, look, he'll bring a different attitude. You know, he'll bring some chutzpah into that city.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's he talked about making the team bigger. All right. Well, some of their younger players outside of the core four aren't exactly gargantuan. You
No,
know, like Nyes isn't that big of a player, so I don't know what he's going to get at. I don't know what he's going to do, and it's a good segue to the other team. They got a new coach or re-upped their coach, and that's the Carolina Hurricanes. In my opinion, did what they had to do and brought back Rod Brindamore, somebody who won a cup with that team as a player. Do you think Rod Brindamore will win a Stanley Cup as a coach with the Carolina Hurricanes? I'm putting you on the spot.
I'm gonna be honest. No, I don't think he is. Just the way, unless he's able to bring in a solid goaltender right now, I'm gonna say no because I
Yeah.
think Metropolitan is gonna be run through the state of New York. I think the Rangers have it locked down. Plus, how many free agents do they have that are not signed this year? I
Yeah,
think
you
they've
were
got
texting me earlier. They have, I'll pull up that
like
list just because it's right here.
I think there's like 9 free agents they have to somehow sign, which I don't think they can afford to get half of them back. So the question is, how are you going to be able to basically rebuild? And then the other question is goaltending, as we saw in the playoffs. Who's is there? Are they going to keep Anderson? They're going to look for someone else. Like, what is their long term plan?
Yeah, I mean, they got a good core. I think Svechnikov and Aho are great. That's a great core to build around those two guys.
And Burns is also getting older too.
Burns is pretty much his career's kind of over at this point, um, or at least him being a top two defenseman in the league or in a Stanley Cup winning team. Um, their forwards that you reading from the list you sent me: Marty Necas, Jake Gensel, Teuvo Teravainen, Seth Jarvis are who I would consider to be the um, notable ones. Now, Seth Jarvis is a restricted free agent, and so is Marty Necas. So there might be an opportunity to bring those guys back on an offer sheet, much like the Bruins at Swayman. But I mean, they're probably not going to re-sign Jake Gensel,
No,
and Teravainen is going to get paid somewhere. And Jordan Martinook and Stefan Nesson are also free agents. So if they're going to have a hard time keeping the band together down there, I think they could, in fact, win a Stanley Cup with Rod Brindamore because they're a destination now and they have money and they have a sort of a winning culture, even though they haven't won a cup since '06, I believe. they're not a they're not a losing franchise. They're not the Columbus Blue Jackets or the, you know, uh gosh, Calgary Flames, right? Or the, the Minnesota Wild. Like they're not a losing franchise. So they'll have an ability to get free agents and to get, development and stuff. So I think it's possible. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. The Carolina Hurricanes will win a Stanley Cup in the next 5 years. I'm not sure when in the next 5 years. Is it going to be next year's? You see, I called them to win the cup this year, and I was wrong. Speaking of where we were wrong, let's jump out of the coaching ranks and into what happened in the second round and preview the third round. I was wrong. I thought the Carolina Hurricanes were going to win the Stanley Cup. I thought they were going to beat the Rangers and move on and get it done this year, not in the next 5. They ended up losing to the Rangers, and the Rangers move on to play the Florida Panthers. The Panthers, of course, beat the Boston Bruins in 6 games. In this Eastern Conference matchup, Kyle, that we see starting tomorrow night, who do you like to win the series, and who do you think is going to win the first road game?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, this is probably two of the hottest goaltenders in the playoff.
Easily.
Also two of the best, probably high-powered offenses as well. Both deadly on the power play, I would say. Probably the top. Actually, I think we have the number 1, 2, and 3 power play still in the playoffs right now, being the Oilers, Rangers, and Florida. But Shesterkin can play out of his mind like he did in against the Hurricanes. I think New York has it. I don't know if Bob can compete with that, but also Florida just gets on you so quick. If the Rangers just sit back like they did a few times against the Hurricanes, the Panthers will just pounce right on them. No pun intended there, but they will just annihilate them, as we saw against the Bruins. Like once the Panthers got on you on the attack in their zone, it was basically game over unless you could clear the puck out. But I just like the depth of the Rangers, and any of their lines can get hot whenever versus the Panthers' top 6 players, I would say. So I'm going Rangers in 6. And I think the first team to win on the road will be the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I think the Panthers will win a game at Madison Square Garden to start the series. Maybe not in game 1, but in game 2. The thing that scares me about the Florida Panthers, and look, I've watched a lot of Florida Panthers hockey over the last year and a half, especially in the playoffs. The Florida Panthers are a sneaky team.
Mm-hmm.
What I mean by that is you look at their top 9 players, and I said this to a friend. I'm going to try and read these off without looking at a paper. They've got, in no particular order, Tarasenko, Reinhart, Barkov, Kachuk, Verhage, Sam Bennett. I mean, I've now listed 7 guys. I haven't even gotten to like Lindell or that guy that plays on their 4th line. I forget his name, but he's like a huge bruiser kind of guy that can also score. But like I definitely missed a guy. Like I'm forgetting guys. And the point is you like forget who they are, and then all of a sudden they're there and they score on you.
Yep.
They're not. The Rangers are built very similarly, but the Florida Panthers, they have like 5 or 6 players who would have been the second best skater on the Bruins in round 2. Like they have like Barkov and Verhage or Bennett. Any of them would have been the Bruins' top center in that series. There's only David Pastrnak you would consider to be on the level of some of those other guys on the Bruins. And that, I mean, Jake DeBrusk, Charlie Coyle, Pavel Zacha, they're good players, but they're not any of those guys. And so the Panthers can suddenly become a very deep, sneaky team because you get down to that 4th line and you're like me, you suddenly forget those guys' names. And then all of a sudden they're putting the puck in the back of the net. So that's what scares me about the Florida Panthers, Kyle, is that they're deep and literally any of their 12 forwards are a threat to score. I'm not saying the Rangers aren't that. I see you sort of grimacing there, but I don't know. I would not put it past Florida to win not just one of the games at MSG, but more than one. I saw what they did to the Lightning, who have won 2 Stanley Cups in the last 5 years. I saw what they did to the Bruins, who are a perennial, contender. And I saw what they did last year, right? I think there's a chance the Panthers win this series. I'm not picking them right now. We'll get to that, but I don't know, man. What do you think about the matchup of strength on strength? We use that term a lot in hockey, strength on strength, but we talked about both teams have a good power play. Both teams have good defensemen who are stout. Both teams have extremely talented forwards. But at some point, something's got to give. What do you think is going to be the first thing to break that in your opinion causes the Rangers to win the series?
For me, I think for the Rangers, it's going to be probably breaking, unfortunately, Bob apart. It's going to be the big thing. But also, if the Panthers give up, the only thing I also see to counteract that is that the Panthers give up a lot of odd man rushes, and that the Rangers are a team you cannot afford to give up odd man rushes. Speaking of our podcast, they are probably, I think, the top team in the league on fast breaks, 2-on-1s. Down. So I feel like that's going to be the big issue for the Panthers, are not making sloppy turnovers, not compared to like the Bruins, but the Rangers are a much different built team. They can't afford to make a mistake like that against a team that is as high powered as them and can probably shoot the lights out as the Panthers can. But like you said, the Panthers still can come back and win games. Both teams have proven that even being up or being down by 2 or 3 goals, they can come back and send this game to overtime. So to me, it's going to be which goaltender is going to break down first, I think.
Yeah. I saw what Chris Kreider did in that game, right? 3 goals to put the Hurricanes away. Vinny Trocheck played really well in that series. Jack Roslovic has come on strong. He's going to get a bag in the offseason. I'm with you. They're dangerous. And you're right. The Florida Panthers were able to overcome some of their turnovers because the Bruins just didn't have finishers. How many times in that series did you see the Boston Bruins have a breakaway that they didn't score on? I don't think they're going to have that same amount of uh luck, so to speak, against the Bruin, the Rangers. The guy who I was trying to think of was Nick Cousins. All right. Some of the other, I'm just looking at their lineup now. Some of the other players who, like, you will completely forget about on the Florida Panthers. Evan Rodriguez had 2 goals. I believe it was in game 4 at Teeny Garden, or maybe it was game 6. No, game 6. The winner was
Florida for game 6.
Yeah, who scored the game winner? I'm pretty sure it was the winner. It wasn't one of those guys who scored the game-winning goal in the series, but I think Evan Rodriguez had at least 2 goals in one of the early games, but like you completely forget about him, right? Oh, my camera went away. Hi. You completely forget about him. So that's my only thing with the Florida Panthers. But last thing I'll say about the series is I do agree with you. I think the difference will be that Bobrovsky is a little shaky. He had a really good game in game 6 against the Bruins. That's why part of the reason why they won the game. But he was a little bit of a wild card in, like, say, games 1 and 4, and also in game 5. So He was a little shaky for at least half the series. And I don't think they're going to be able to get away with that against the Rangers, and as you pointed out. So you're saying Rangers in 6. I don't know. I think
You gonna root against the team you picked to win it last year, or are you gonna
I
go?
don't know. I This is just so hard, man. This is so hard. We haven't even talked about the West yet. I'm not committed. I need to commit. All right. I'm going for the sake of a good show. I'll go Panthers in 6.
Okay.
I'll go Panthers in 6 because the Hurricanes were able to push back against the Rangers. So I do think there's a formula there. You just need a team to not fall asleep in game 1. The interesting thing about this series is the Rangers haven't played since last Wednesday,
Yep.
and I believe, and the Panthers haven't played since Friday. So there'll be 5 and 7 days rest for both teams, respectively. That might have something to do with it. Speaking about rest, the Dallas Stars have been waiting around since the weekend as well in order to find out. Why are you laughing?
Just laughing because they had so much, just a long time to rest for the Dallas Stars.
Yeah, they are, by the time they, have face off on Thursday, I think the Cowboys will be ready to go to training camp. Like it's incredible how much time we're taking a page out of the NBA here with a week in between series. I digress. The um the Dallas Stars have been waiting around since I think Friday or Saturday night. I think it was Friday. They've been waiting around since Friday. They'll finally face off against Edmonton on Thursday. This is after Edmonton beat their Western Canadian rivals, the Vancouver Canucks, in Game 7, and have thus moved on to the West Finals for, I believe, the second time in 3 years. And or maybe it's the third straight year. Were they in last year? This might be the third straight year. No, they weren't in last year. They were in
No,
2022, not in
yeah,
2023.
were they in it last year? I can't
No,
remember.
the who'd the Knights beat? The Knights had to have beaten somebody from the.
I thought it was Dallas,
Yeah, it was. Okay.
or
All
was
right.
it?
So you have it had to have been somebody from the Central, probably, right? It wouldn't have been someone else from the Pacific, most likely.
Unless they were the Wild Card. I think Dallas
No,
was the
but then
Wild.
you would have played him in the first round or
Yeah,
the
so
second.
maybe it was the Oilers again. I don't remember.
No, they couldn't have played somebody in there. We're not going to look it up. We're just going to let's pretend it's the Dallas Stars.
Okay.
All right. So the Dallas Stars uh, are squaring off. This is a team that's been hanging around for a few years, kind of like Carolina in the East. But Edmonton has the best player in the world, and probably the second or third best player in the world, depending on how you look at it. So you did pick Edmonton to sweep
I did.
Vancouver. It was anything but a sweep. In fact, I thought Vancouver was going to win it in 6. They ended up bagging it away and, in classic Vancouver fashion, have a 3-2 lead, blow it. Nice to harken back there to 2011. But so you're high on the Edmonton Oilers. Other than the power play, why should I believe that they're going to beat the Dallas Stars and win the Stanley Cup?
The reason why is because Dallas already has beaten the Stanley Cup champs of last year, so they're riding this huge high, and they just probably beat the MVP of the league of this year, Colorado. Yes, Colorado was down one of their best players as well, but not to make excuses. They did put up a fight the best they could. And I just think Dallas, for some reason, it's just everything's clicking. Like all their cylinders, everything's just firing together. Their offense, their defense, they're playing hungry. They're playing like how the Knights did last year, I would say. And I think they learned their lesson from playing the Stanley Cup champs last year, that this is the way we have to play to overcome any adversity. And plus, they're pretty healthy right now. Goaltending is going pretty well. Plus, I don't trust the Oilers' chances like goaltending. However, we saw, the Oilers aren't afraid to come back but Dallas Stars haven't really blown too many leads. Oilers have blown a couple of leads this postseason. So I would be a bit more concerned with that. But you get the number one and number 3 or 4 best player in the league. So you could probably come back at any time, really, just with that line alone. But I'm just wondering how much gas is left in the tank there for them Oilers after playing a long series against a former Canadian or a Canadian team itself and pushing them all the way to the edge of basically the breaking point.
Yeah, I'm with you on Dallas. So I really thought you were gonna. I tease you up to go, pump the tires of the Edmonton Oilers. I thought that's where you're gonna go with that. Um, Look, if Dallas pulls this off, so they have a tall task in front of them, but I think Edmonton's going to come out firing. They have this big emotional win on the road in Game 7 in Vancouver, and they're going to now go. Are they the home? Are they going to have home ice? I don't think they're going to have home
No,
ice.
Dallas home ice.
Yeah, so
Dallas.
they're going to go to Dallas. All right, that's a long flight. They're going to get down there. They're going to be all pumped up on adrenaline. I think they're going to. I think they're going to come out strong in the series. And it seems to me that if Dallas is able to pull this off, all right, beating the Knights, beating the Avs, as you pointed out, the two past defending Stanley Cup champions. Let's say they go and they beat the Edmonton Oilers. They've now beaten the two previous Stanley Cup champions, the consensus best player in the world, and his team. And then let's just say they go and they beat the New York Rangers, who are the favorites out east. They might have had one of the best runs of all time leading up to a Stanley Cup championship. Now they're only halfway there. And one of the things you and I criticized the Dallas Stars for earlier in the season when we left them out of our power rankings is we didn't think they were that deep of a team. But I guess I just wasn't familiar enough with some of these guys. I mean, Matt Duchene playing really well. He's made a difference. They brought in Mason Marchment this year. He's made a difference. Tyler Seguin and Jamie Benn used to be the whole team. They're playing on the third line. You have that small kid who's really fast and skilled, Jason Robertson. And then old Bruins friend, Craig Smith, backing it up on your fourth line where he should be. But he is a fourth line. If he's your fourth liner on a Stanley Cup winning team, that's great, because when he was on the Bruins, we were trying to make him play on the second line. All right. So he's in his wheelhouse down there. You got Sam Steele, Wyatt Johns. I mean, they've got really strong centers. Joe Pavelski is going to be a Hall of Famer, and he needs a cup. I think he has, if I'm not mistaken, the most career games played in the league active without a Stanley Cup.
I think that's right.
I think Zach Parise is not too far behind. And I also think Brent Burns, who we talked about earlier, isn't far behind either. But they're deep. They're deeper than I gave them credit for. And, I think bringing in Chris Tanev from Calgary at the trade deadline was huge. Ryan Suter's a veteran. And then I look at their goaltending, which we haven't brought up yet. Jake Ottinger, probably the best in the league, if not for Shesterkin. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, he was up there for potential goalie of the year, so I give him full credit. Not spoken enough about, but he's definitely a guy to an eye on.
In a league full of guys like Connor Hellebuck and Igor Shesterkin and the guy there on the Panthers who we talked about, Bobrovsky, who's had a good year, Thatcher Demko before he got hurt. All those guys, and a league full of guys like that, not to mention Jeremy Swayman, who had an incredible postseason. Just hats off to the Bruins goalie there, who's going to get a bag of money, hopefully. Jake Ottinger's that guy, right? And they're going to have a lot of firepower to deal with in Edmonton. Bouchard, McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. They're gonna have a lot of firepower to deal with. Do you think that's gonna be a problem for them just because they've been tested so much by the Knights and the Avalanche, now the Oilers? Do you think, they're dealing with a few injuries, a couple guys day to day, including Rupi Heinz? Um, are there any concerns on your part about them dealing with the offense of the Edmonton Oilers?
I don't think so. I mean, you got to accept that McDavid's going to do McDavid things. You can only do so much to stop him, unfortunately. Like, he is the best player in the world. So you don't have to limit what he can do. But I think Dallas just has the answers for everything. Just right now, just like I said, everything seems to be clicking. Even if they lose a game or two, like I just don't see it. I was watching them play the Knights a couple times. The Avs is just like everything for them. Like, they were extremely physical. I think that's going to be the number one thing. If they're as physical they've been the first two rounds, I don't think the Oilers have the manpower to keep up with that. I don't think they're deep enough to be able to just take constant hits down game one. If it's a heavy hitting game, if they're taking like, I don't know how many hits they're taking per game per se. Let's say if they're taking like what, 40 hits a game, like that's a lot of hits to take in one game. Like, I don't think they are able to withstand it, especially if you, like I said, if you're putting the pedal to the metal and you have your best players out there majority of the time. We are human. Eventually, they will hit a point that they can't go on much further. So I'm just more worried about them to have McDavid stay on the ice longer, having Draisaitl stay out there longer, just to try to keep them in it, to have them score more opportunities than Dallas just playing 1 through 4 and having no issue, no problems all the way through. Plus, I like their goaltending over, for example, was it Campbell's? I don't remember who's in net for.
Yeah, see, I thought it was him too. This is how often that I stay up late and watch the Edmonton Oilers. To fairness to us, their goalie changes about as often as, I don't know. I can't come up with it saying that quickly. Somebody named Stuart Skinner and somebody named Calvin Pickard. As far
Yeah,
as I'm concerned, they could work at Costco. Like, I'm serious. But recent history tells us that can still win you a Stanley Cup. Aiden Hill, who the hell's that?
yeah,
Well, he won a Stanley Cup last year. So Logan Thompson, who the hell's that? Oh, well, he helped the Vegas Knights reach the playoffs. So maybe it's good that it's not Jack Campbell, because I thought that guy sucked. Turns out he's not their goalie, so maybe they have a chance.
yeah.
I'm with you. It's the goaltending is certainly a advantage Dallas.
Agreed.
The power play and offensive capability is surely, in my opinion, an advantage to Edmonton. One of those things is either going to have to get slowed down or give. I think Dallas has good defenders. I think Dallas is deeper than I gave them credit for. And they've got guys that want to win. I mean, Tyler Seguin won a Stanley Cup when he was 18. That was like 14 years ago, 13 years ago, however long ago it was. Like, Joe Pavelski's never won a cup. Jamie Benn has won gold medals, but he hasn't won a Stanley Cup. So I am, I'm, uh, I'm high on the Dallas Stars. I am. I'd like to see Oilers Rangers. I think that, like, as you pointed out last week when we talked before round two, I think that would be compelling. It'd be good for the sport to have McDavid in the Stanley Cup final. But who do you think's going to win this series and why?
Oh gosh. I'm feeling Dallas. I mean, I root against them and then they're playing the Knights, so I gotta pick the team that beat my Stanley Cup prediction team. So I'm going with Dallas. I just like what they're doing. I feel like New York, if it's gonna be Rangers, I'm thinking Rangers, New York City versus Dallas, next big city taking each other on. I just see like two complete built teams facing off against each other. And it's just like you can say Sagan's like a superstar and all that, but if you think about it, both teams probably don't have a number one superstar besides probably Shesterkin, I would say, that you would say is a top
Yeah,
10,
yeah,
like forward defenseman, maybe Truba, maybe Robinson. But like I think it's a little bit of a stretch of
yeah,
top.
yeah.
Those
Probably
guys
the
aren't
Panarin, Zibanejad.
like
You
they're
know,
like teams compared to like the Florida Panthers got all these big named Oilers.
yeah.
Like I think it'd be like a perfect team matchup to see
Yeah,
who wins. I think, to be honest, I think out of the four teams, New York has the most pressure, and out of the other four or the three, Dallas has the least amount of pressure. I think Oilers have a lot
agreed.
more, Panthers have a lot more pressure. So if Dallas just win this, like you said before,
Well,
and
I think the Rangers are the favorite in the East. I'm with you though. I'm with you though. The other interesting thing, I'm with you on the pressure. Like, there's certainly a lot of pressure on the Edmonton Oilers.
yeah,
The whole, literally at this point, they are the whole country of Canada is probably, maybe with the exception of Vancouver and Calgary, rooting for the Edmonton Oilers. Um, the interesting thing. So Connor McDavid, number one overall pick, plays for the Oilers. Sam Reinhart, a number 3 overall pick, I believe, plays for the Panthers. He was in 2014 and 2015. Then you have Tyler Seguin, the number 2 overall pick from 2010, plays for the Stars. And then you have on the Rangers, Alexis Lafreniere, a number 1 overall pick from 2016, I think.
yeah, 2017.
2000, no, yeah, it was Matthews in 16. I think it was Lafreniere in 17. But either way, there's some really high draft picks on those 4 teams. Each, Sagan is the only one with a Stanley Cup, and he won it way back in 2011. So, his rookie year. So something's got to give here. And while we're on the subject, Kyle, this is going to be my last big long quip to the audience, but I think you'll find it interesting as a sports fan.
All right.
So in 2018 and 19, that calendar year, fall of 18, spring of 19, that sports calendar year, the Patriots and the Red Sox won the Super Bowl and the World Series, respectively.
Yeah,
Then the Bruins went to the Stanley Cup and they lost to the St. Louis Blues in 2019. So Boston could have had a 3-city champion situation in that season. Fast forward 2 years, the Lightning win the Stanley Cup in 2021. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers win the Super Bowl earlier that season against the Chiefs in February of 2021. But yet, 5 months before that, or 3 months before that, excuse me, the Tampa Bay Rays lost the World Series. So Tampa could have had a 3-sport champion city. Then you get to this year. The Texas Rangers have already won the World Series from Dallas, Fort Worth area. Then you move on and you have a situation going right now where the Mavericks and the Stars are both in their conference final. One of those teams, I confidently say that one of those teams isn't going to make final, in my opinion. But let's say they both do. One of those teams, if we're going to follow our recent trend, will have to win and the other will have to lose. I'd take that probably if the Mavs beat the Timberwolves and make the final, they'll probably lose to the Celtics should the Celtics beat the Pacers and move on, which would then leave the 2 out of 3 to be the Dallas Stars winning the Stanley Cup. So that's what I'm going to go with, man. I'm going to go with the Dallas Stars beating the Oilers in 6 games. And then I think they'll go on and they'll beat the Florida Panthers to win the Stanley Cup. And in that scenario, you have the Dallas Stars completing post-lockout the best run to the Stanley Cup.
I like it. I like it. I could see that.
All right, so I lean over to you. Who wins this series, and who wins the Stanley Cup? Now that we have to reshuffle our projections,
I think Dallas wins in 5. I'm going to call it short and sweet for Dallas.
it's not like when Edmonton was going to sweep Vancouver and it took them 7 games.
Yeah, they just
right.
fell apart. Don't discuss that with me. They fell apart.
All right. Okay. All right.
I'm going Dallas there, and that's going to be Dallas versus Rangers in the finals. And I think this is the year we see the Dallas Stars make a name for themselves once again. and win the Stanley Cup.
All
Being
right,
the
we're riding the train. Sign us up,
Rangers,
Dallas
and
Stars.
we're going 7 games, and there's gonna be, let's go, 3 of those games go to overtime.
I mean, we're getting way ahead of ourselves, and next week we'll know, or maybe 2 weeks from now we'll know. But imagine that matchup. You've got Ottinger and Shesterkin in the Stanley Cup. Basically, whoever wins that series, the goalie's going to win the Conn Smythe. I think right now, if the series, if any of these teams left were to win the cup, only the Oilers um, winner would give you a Conn Smythe winner that's not a goalie. Because I think if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, it's going to be pretty hard the way Bobrovsky's playing, even though he's been sort of shaky. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
the rest of the team, nobody else has really grabbed the mantle. I think Sam Reinhart's played really well, but not. You really got to like excel as a skater to like. You got to score like a boatload of goals and have a ton of points and log a ton of minutes. And unless that changes, we're only halfway through the playoffs. I think the Oilers, you could probably give it to Bouchard or McDavid or Draisaitl at
Yeah,
this point. Um, but we're only halfway through, so we'll see. But at this point, I don't have a rooting interest anymore. The Bruins are out, sad face. But that sort of takes the pressure off. To be frank with you, I really wanted the Canucks to win. Because I think it's good for the sport when Vancouver's relevant in hockey, but to have the best player in the world be moving on is still good for the sport too. I think we got 4 good markets. Would have liked Boston, New York for obvious reasons. And I think Vancouver and Edmonton in the second round series is really cool. But I don't know. Do you have any final thoughts? Or for our listeners, I don't have anything.
I don't have anything at the moment, but if you're looking at Stanley Cup odds, the Rangers have the lowest odds to win the Stanley Cup, which is very shocking to me, which I didn't think would be the case.
Who's the favorite? Is it Edmonton?
It's Florida.
Florida is the betting favorite because I know Money Puck had the Oilers as the favorite based on
Uh,
analytics, but based on betting, the Florida Panthers are the favorite. Interesting.
FanDuel here, yeah, it's got the Panthers and the Stars and the Oilers and
I
the
do
Rangers.
think if you're going solely on roster, I think the Panthers have the best roster. I just do, but I don't know. The best rosters don't win because last year the Bruins had the best roster, and the Vegas Knights had one of the best rosters this year, and neither one
Yeah,
of those teams won the Stanley Cup. So it's not always the best roster. So
yeah, I don't know. Be interesting to see, but like I said, I think this is going to be a fun series. Both series are going to be fun to watch, and I think if Edmonton doesn't win a game down in Dallas, I think they might be done. If they cannot go 1-1, I think they're done because that gives too much confidence to Dallas to go into Edmonton and just stomp them.
yeah, I wonder what kind of home ice advantage the Oilers are going to have up there because I take it those fans are a lot like Bruins fans, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're happy. Oh my God, we had this great Game 7 win, and then immediately they sit back in their seat for Game 3, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that was a week ago, and since then we've realized that we're playing a much better team." And I wonder if people are going to start to get a little bit quiet up there, if things aren't going great. But we'll see. The Edmonton Oilers face off starting Thursday night. That's going to be a late one, I think. I think it's at least 8 o'clock Eastern. And then tomorrow we have the Rangers and Panthers squaring off. We'll have a boatload of stuff to go through when we get back after this round. We'll preview the Stanley Cup. We'll break down what happened in the conference finals, and we'll have any other off the ice issue, not issues, updates to share with you. There was a trade today. We didn't have time to cover that, but we will cover all the off-season stuff over the summer. But until next round and until next time, my name is Will Highland. I'm joined by Mr. Clutch, Kyle Diezel, and you have been listening and watching Home Field Advantage. Oh my gosh, I did it again! You've been listening and watching Odd Man Rush. We don't do that show anymore together. It's okay. Next time, guys. Next time. Just like for all those guys who lost in round 2.